Today we have our very first guest on the General Thoughts podcast, and I am elated. An award-winning educator with many books published to her credit, the most recent Conversations with an Investigator on Direct Kindle Press. She has a career that spans decades as an investigator, having worked tirelessly to vindicate the innocent, and she goes by the name Kitty Hailey. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
We are happy to have you here. How is your day going so far?
Well, it's pretty good because it started out with a call from Tysheem Crocker and it's ending up with a call with Tysheem Crocker. So I'd say it's pretty perfect.
I love it. That's a fact. For those who may not know, what is the difference between a certified legal investigator and a private investigator?
Well, we're all private investigators, but I am a quote unquote CLI, which is a certification given through the National Association of Legal Investigators. It's kind of like getting your doctorate degree in investigation. So it means that we've been tested and proven and gone in front of a board of our peers, written papers and taken tests and exams, and they've been satisfied with our work. And right at this moment, there are very few of us, and I'm very proud to be one of them. So it's something that it's a crown I wear with great respect.
Congratulations.
Thank
you
you.
are very elite in your field.
Well, it's interesting. Investigators are around the country and around the world, and we are not united like attorneys are. We don't have one governing body. So there's not one certification or one group that knows everybody. But I have been lucky. I've done a lot of writing for the profession. I've done a lot of teaching and a lot of lecturing. And I was privileged to work with the Federal Defender Capital Habeas Unit. So I got to know people in the public domain and in the private domain. So I think you would say I'm lucky.
Yes, yes, yes. For people who don't know, the listeners, the audience, the Federal Habeas Federal Habeas Corpus Capital Unit, they represent guys who've been sentenced to death. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. There are not a ton of us. The Federal Defender Office is actually a government entity, a quasi-government entity, in that every person who is convicted and sentenced to death has the right to representation. And so we are that representation. There are usually 30 to 50 attorneys per unit, but there's only 8 to 15 investigators. So it's tough for us to do it. We have like 300 people in Pennsylvania or something like that on death row. And because we're federal, we work Pennsylvania and we worked Delaware, Arkansas, Missouri, wherever they had something, they sent us. So we got to really meet people around the country. Right.
I'm very familiar. I studied the history, followed the cases, and you guys done great work, and the best has come out of the Federal Habeas Corpus Unit because y'all have to be experts with the 9545, with the PCRA, as well as the 2254, which is the Federal Habeas Corpus petition. And you guys are on top of all the new laws, all the new case laws. You guys are elite.
Well, it's maybe unique is a better word than elite. I'd like to say that we are, but there's some really good investigators around the country. I'm going to be a little bit humble here. This takes dedication, and yes, I'm very proud to be a part of a very special group of people, but there are special people working these jobs around the country. I'm so thrilled that the number of people doing investigation into post-conviction work has increased so much. And it's because of guys like you that bring attention to it. You know,
Right.
when I first started, because I am a little older than 25, when I first started this job, I went to the first Capitol Habeas conference, which was held in Chicago probably 35, 40 years ago. I don't even remember how long ago it was. But there were 11 exonerees on the stage, and we thought that was amazing. We were thrilled that there are 11 exonerees in the country, and now we have hundreds. So
Now we have.
it's exciting because we have hundreds and we're going to have hundreds more.
Right. Right. Let me ask you this. Guys sentenced to death, wrongfully convicted. Um, there's a new terminology going, that's taken off, and it's called death by incarceration. So this is when someone is sentenced to a life sentence.
Which
How
is almost
come?
worse.
Which is exactly, and
Mhm.
that's the point I want to make. You made a comment that they have the right to counsel when you're on death row. They seem to get the best attorneys, the best investigators, and guys sentenced to death by incarceration don't get any investigators, and they get the worst attorneys.
Well,
Unless you're
okay, I'm
fortunate.
under,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
You know, there was a law 40 years ago now, Gideon versus Wainwright, which um, prescribed that everyone has the right to counsel.
right,
Unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword because it's the government and government entities that puts people in prison,
right,
and yet they also have to provide counsel for them. So there is the public defender system. It's just underfunded, understaffed, and overworked. And these
right,
people that work with that system are dedicated and they do their best. But if you can afford a private attorney, you get a little more attention because if somebody's got 50 cases, it's a lot
right,
different than someone who only has 5. And so if you can have private counsel, it's really helpful. But you need counsel. You need someone to guide you through the system who has some clout and who can be your voice outside.
right. Prior to you investigating my case, when you begin that investigation, I had already been in jail for 23 years.
Yes.
There has never been an investigation done in my case from a defense perspective.
Yeah, that was pathetic. Um, it it's shocking when you hear those numbers, but unfortunately they're commonplace to me because I have 5 PCRAs that are active right now. One has been incarcerated since 1989, one since 2005. The numbers are outrageous. The loss of time. I mean, if somebody thought about it, let's just think that you're 20 years old and now you've been incarcerated for 25 years. Fast forward, you lost 25 years, you are now 45 years old, and those 25 years are gone. You're never going to get them
Right.
back. You're never going to
No.
be a kid. You're never going to have those experiences that a kid has. You're never going to have a young family. Because by the time you get out, if you have a family, it's not going to be young. It's going to be older.
Right.
So you've grown up
Right.
in prison. You've matured in prison. And the sad part is I've met some of the most amazing, wonderful people in prison and on death row because they've had an opportunity to experience their greatest potential. They have had a chance to study and grow and learn and become the people that they should have been on the outside. They're never given a
Right.
chance.
Right. Right. You couldn't have put it better. Oh man. During your long and amazing career as a certified legal investigator, what was the most egregious level of prosecutor misconduct you've ever uncovered?
That that's a trick question because it happens all the time. And
Right.
here's the problem. It's repeated over and over again.
This is what I want
Almost,
the public to know.
yeah, yeah. We've worked with people that where Documents have been withheld forever. Well, friends of yours, Roddy Johnson and Lorenzo Johnston, I worked on both of their cases, and
Hmm.
information and evidence was withheld um,
Hmm.
for Roddy for years and years and years, and the evidence was there that proved that the prosecutor had done some egregious things, that he had been complicit in um, giving favor to a snitch so that someone
Right.
else could be put away. The same thing in Lorenzo's. I mean, there's too much of there's too much power that is abused. There are some wonderful prosecutors, okay? There are some wonderful police officers. Unfortunately, we don't get to experience them because so many of them, especially in that period from 1985 to 2005, used the police force as a private I don't know, like a private
Military.
Gestapo agency. Yeah, private military. Yeah, yeah, that's a good word for it. They
Mm.
needed to get their numbers up. They used their power. They hid behind a badge and a gun. Um, and I'm not even going to say that they were prejudiced because so many of them were black, so many people were Hispanic, so many were brown.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just a prejudice. It was um, a power
A
play
power
to show.
move.
Yeah, a power move to show how strong they were and how weak the rest of the world was. And unfortunately, many of them were benefiting financially from the pain and suffering of others. So these are things that have to be taken care of. And again, every police officer is not bad. I, you know,
Right.
I I tell that to when I speak in front of groups. Because when I talk to investigators, there are many investigators that do not like me because they were former law enforcement. And
Right.
and and I've had it said to my face at a conference, um, why should we listen to you? We lock them up, you get them off. And here's my
Mm.
response. All right, my response is simple. If you did a just, righteous investigation, if you put the right person behind bars, if you are getting a killer off the streets so that they will not hurt me or my children or my grandchildren, then I will support you and you have no problem from me because I'm not going to find anything wrong. But if you twisted things, turned things, withheld evidence, manufactured evidence, or just put somebody away because your thought process was that, well, he's a bad dude and I don't like him. Well, then you have a problem because I'm going to be your worst enemy because I'm going to find that out and you're going to suffer. And that's the way I
Mm.
feel about it. If you did it right, there's no problem. But if you did it wrong, shame on you.
Mm. Couldn't have been stated better. For the listening audience, could you please explain what a Brady violation is and the potential consequence for the failure to disclose favorable information to the defendant and the preparation for his trial?
Well, I think television has been very helpful in one way because it's helped to explain the court system. So all of the TV programs that you see discuss this in some extent. Um, I'm not crazy about television cop shows because they don't show it real. Okay.
Right.
I don't do anything in a half an hour with two commercials, right?
Right.
But the Brady situation is this. It's based on Brady versus Maryland, which was a case. I don't know the date of it. I think for some reason I think it was 1996, but don't quote me
Nin-
on
nin-
that.
1963, and then his
1963.
progeny
Okay, thank
worked
you.
his way up. Yeah.
Right. So what it says is that you cannot withhold information and evidence if you are the prosecution. You can't withhold information or evidence that would go to showing that the person you have accused and charged is actually innocent of a crime. And so that's why during the period of discovery, which is after someone is charged and after they set a court date, the prosecution has to turn over all of its data and all of its material. They can't just pick and choose what they think is important. They have to turn it all over because they don't know what's important to your attorney. They don't know what your theory of the case is going to be. So they have to turn everything over. That includes all of their writings, all of the police investigation, everybody they've interviewed, every piece of evidence they've picked up, the results of all the evidence they've had tested, everything. But unfortunately, they don't do that. They pick and choose and they give it out. And then we have to find out, as the defense investigators and the defense attorneys, we have to find out what's missing. And the burden shouldn't be on us. The burden is on them, because the law clearly says you have to turn it over. So when they withhold information about a witness, when they withhold someone they've interviewed, when they withhold a document or a payment to a snitch, all of that has to be revealed. Because if it's not revealed, we're hamstrung. We don't know what their deal was. In one particular case, I remember they turned over everything in the police reports. So, and what we did is we went through them, and we had volumes of pages. We had like 3,000 pages of police reports, interviews, trial transcripts, all kinds of things. But what we did is we sat down and we went through every page and we documented them. And we had pages 1 through 7. And then we had pages 9 through 45. And then we had pages 47 through 116. Well, there were 4 pages missing. What was on those 4 pages that might be important? And it took us years and years and years to find out that pages 7 to 9 were an interview with another suspect. And they said they never had another suspect in this case. But that other suspect ended up being the witness against our guy. How does that happen? That means that somebody talked to the person and said, you know, we suspect you of doing this crime, but if you'll name so-and-so, we'll let you go, right? So it was indicative of deals being made, all right? And we can't have that. When it says, give us all the evidence, give us all the evidence. And if you've got something to hide, well, shame on you, you shouldn't have. There's nothing that the prosecution should be hiding. Police are allowed to lie, but they're not allowed to lie to the defense. They're allowed to lie to people they bring into court, into custody, but they are not allowed to lie to us. And that's where the problem comes
in. It must be fulfilling when you can discover that Brady was violated.
It's exciting and it's pathetic, because it takes years to turn it over, and that's more years lost. That is unnecessary. I'm sorry, you know, I get angry when I talk about this, because it's frustrating, because it happens all the time, where the simplest little thing ends up being a big thing. And I've been with cases where it wasn't little things, where there were boxes and boxes and boxes of clothing in a storage unit, an evidence storage unit, that could not possibly have fit our client because of his size and weight, and yet they were covered with blood. How can that be that we never saw that we were never given the opportunity to test the blood? Why was it in their locker? And it was there because they collected it, because they saw it as evidence, and then they held up the pants and said, well, that can't be him. And they did nothing with them. We did. We were able to use that. So it's a matter of, we need to be thorough. And if the police and the prosecution don't want to be accused of wrongdoing, then they have to be more transparent. It's really simple.
Right. I agree. It was heavy. Damn. What did it take before you could fully determine that I may have been wrongfully convicted and that I am innocent?
Well, I'm lucky in that I work with wonderful teams. I don't do anything in a vacuum. The investigator is a really, really, really important part of the team. But we are not the whole team, okay? We're only part of it. And so we deal with legal counsel that advises us. We talk to them constantly. We tell them what we have, where we're going. They guide us in what they need. But in your case, I pretty much figured it out within the first 4 months of reviewing your file that something was wrong and we had to get out and redo the entire investigation. Or let's put that differently, that we had to get out and do an entire investigation because it was never done before. So we started from
Right.
scratch. Okay, we read everything that had been done before. We read everything that had transpired in all of your trials. We put together what I call a cast of characters, which is not a witness list, but it is the name of every person who appears in the police report, the ambulance report for the person who died, the autopsy, the backgrounds, the witness statements, everything, every person who is in any way named, we put them down. We find them again. We figured out what their responsibility was. Then we reorder it and put it in order of who is most important to interview first. Because
Hmm.
just because you think somebody might have valuable information, it might not be a good idea to go right to them. You have to go in order and you have to go slow and you have to be methodical. And you uncover every stone and you overturn every stone and you look underneath it and eventually you get to the right place. And we found the right person. We found people who led us to the right person. We found people who told us about the culture in your society because every city has its own culture. Everything
Right.
is different. I mean, similarities, but every city has specific cultures, specific communities, specific gangs, groups of people. We talk to adults, we talk to parents of your contemporaries, we talk to your contemporaries, we talk to people who have been incarcerated. And then we talk to the jury. In your case, the jury was
Yep.
amazingly talented. Oh
In my
my
case,
God.
they spoke to the jury.
Yeah, we talked to every living juror member who was available. Don't forget, your trial was 23 years before when we started the case. So some of the older
Right.
people were either no longer alive or no longer in condition to talk to us. But we found
Right.
out what the tone of the court was, what the way the evidence was presented, what the fear of the jury was. Oh, by the way, your jury was all white. I have not figured out how that happened or why, but
Oh man.
it
The
was
entire
it
jury
was
pool. The
yeah, the
entire jury
entire jury.
pool.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? And you're
It
supposed to
is.
be judged by a jury of your peers.
Right.
I'm a white woman, but tell me, how much do you and I have in common, other than the fact that I work within the community of people who are incarcerated? You know,
Right.
uh,
Right.
if I were just picked up off the street without my background, I would know nothing of your world particularly, as you would know nothing of my world. We think we do,
Right.
but until you walk in my shoes, you don't know me.
Right. 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 I cried when I got the report. I cried. I read the report and I read all of the statements, all of the affidavits, the declarations, and I cried because I had been telling people, screaming at the top of my lungs, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. And nobody had any reason to believe me outside of my family and that my immediate family because the longer you're gone from society, the longer you're amputated from society, I should say,
Mhm,
um, people become estranged.
mhm.
So nobody had any reason to believe my innocence. And then the report came, and that gave DJ Coco Chanel what she needed to be able to do her documentary. That gave Jason Flom what he needed to be able to do hashtag 330.
Mhm.
That put us in a position to have a Brady violation before the court. And I'm grateful. But I definitely cried because, like you said, there had never been an investigation in my case. My attorney didn't even go to the crime scene.
Well, that's the first thing
He
you do. You have
yeah,
to. And we
right,
interviewed the person who you allegedly were trying to kill, who
right,
who said he wasn't trying to kill me. He never put a gun to my head. I was
right,
there. He didn't do
right,
any of that. And he said, and
Right.
I told them, I've already told them that, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
it's hard when you hear the evidence to understand that you're still there. But for the listener who doesn't understand, this is the slowest wheel of progress that you will ever encounter. The court
Right.
system is so overcrowded and overloaded, and it's their own making, by the way, because there are so many hundreds of wrongfully convicted people. But
Right.
it runs so slowly that it can be a year and a half before you have a hearing after you find evidence. And then after you
Right.
prove it's true, it can be another year and a half until you have a hearing to make a decision as to whether you should be freed or not. And just because they
Right.
say you're going to be free doesn't mean you turn around and walk out the next day. You know,
Right.
everything takes time. And
Right.
you know, you've wasted too much of your life already, and you could be such a benefit to society. So, yeah, we're going to work really hard to see that we can present this properly. I don't present it. All I do is find information and give it to
Right.
the attorney, and the attorney
Right.
does it. Again, this is a team. It's a team of attorneys and paralegals and investigators. They all work together like a flying machine, right? I do
Right.
my
Right.
part,
Mm-hmm.
and I sometimes they don't even go into the courtroom, but the attorney
Yeah.
takes it from there and uses
Mhm.
it properly and writes the right pleading and goes into the courtroom with it, and hopefully they're successful. I will stay with witnesses and spoon feed them until they get on the stand. Okay.
Right.
Just to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they are not afraid and they understand that we're on their side and that they are giving a benefit to society. Uh, but you know, it's interesting. While I'm spoon feeding them, I can't buy them anything. I can't pay them anything because I don't pay
Right.
witnesses. You know, I
Right.
just keep them company and assure them that,
Right.
that we need them and that they're valuable.
You know how to find people and you know how to ask the right questions.
Mhm. Well,
And
that's what an
that's
investigator does.
right. Yeah. There's a documentary forthcoming.
Yeah, yeah, we're not going to talk about that too much right now because it's in the planning
Okay.
stages. Okay,
Okay.
and
All
yeah,
right. Top secret.
well, not so top secret, but not official yet. As soon as it's
All
official,
right.
I'll let you know. Yeah,
All
yeah, but
right.
you play
All
a part
right.
in that too. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea is that, you know, you're giving me an opportunity I don't usually have. This should be about you, not about me. And I don't want it
Hmm.
to be about me, but I do want it to be about investigators who are very rarely appreciated for the work that they do. I think you never hear of the investigator. When someone walks someone out of prison, there's an attorney on either side. There's very rarely an investigator present. Yet, if we did not do the work that we do, you would not be
Hmm.
the one walking out of prison. And I just have to shout out to the wonderful men and women who have dedicated their lives and years and years and years. I've worked on cases for as many as 14 years. Okay. And
Hmm.
that's a large investment in time. And
Yes, it is.
these people are amazing. So if I can shine a light back on other people who do what I do, then I will be doing a service because the attorneys are wonderful. They're great, but they could not go into court without information and evidence. Now they know what to do with it. I wouldn't know what to do with it, but I know how to get it and how to give it to them. And so do all these other men and women across the country doing what I do every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100. 100, Kitty. Ooh, this was deep. This was a heavy one. We hope y'all enjoy this. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, so much, Kitty Hailey. You can
Well,
find her. Her website is kittyhailey.com. If anyone needs, excellent investigative work for someone that may be wrongfully convicted or in prison for a crime, being held unjustly, unlawful convictions, I'm blessed to have had her come into my life when she did. I grew up so much in a few years that I've known her and that I'm still getting to know Kitty Hailey, and I'm grateful.
Thank you. I'm going to add this. I'm not going to take on new cases because, as I said, I'm not 25 years old anymore. But I
Okay.
will gladly refer out cases to other investigators whom I trust. And
Right.
so I can do that. And I can certainly talk to people. But the
Okay.
responsibility of the case is great. And Tysheem, you're going to take a lot of work and effort, and so are the others I'm still working on. So yeah,
Right.
I'm there. But again, there are wonderful people out there, and I'll be glad to hook you up with them.
Right. So don't go to her to try to give her the bag. She's going to direct y'all to somebody else who's qualified.
Mhm.
Yep. All right, we're gonna close it out.
Yeah.
This is the General Thoughts Podcast. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for the support. Amen.